This is Michael Osterlink, Wokenmo Radio, where we explore individual and social transformation through collaborative action. Today's show is brought to you by Cosper Scafidi, an amazing bodyworker in Northern Virginia area who has integrated different somatic practices into his work. To learn more about his work, you can visit his website at www.cosperscafidi.com. That's COSPERCAFITI.com. Today's guest is Dr. Anita Sanchez, a powerful visionary woman of Mexican American and Indigenous Aztec heritage, who has for over 38 years woven Indigenous wisdom, business, and science into her global consulting and training with the world and corporate leaders and their teams. She also guides journeys into the Amazon rainforest with the Panchakarma Alliance to support business people and their families to learn about their connection to spirit, earth, and indigenous people, as well as to build understanding of the importance of preserving indigenous cultures for all of us. She is also the author of The Four Sacred Gifts, Indigenous Wisdom for the Modern Times, excuse me. Hi, Anita. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me here.
It's great to have you on. I want to hear a little bit about your story before we get into your book. And my first question for you is, tell me about the picture you drew when you were in kindergarten and how that was kind of a visual representation of the rest of your life.
It is. Well, all of us have dreams, and some of them are long-lasting ones. Some you have to let go of. So you're pointing to one that it makes me light up. So as early as age 3, I remember having this dream, and the dream is I see the earth and then all these people of different sizes and colors. And I remember in kindergarten when I was asked, along with the other children, what are you going to be when you grow up? Draw it. And I remember getting the crayons. I knew exactly what to draw. So I drew it, and I was 25th of the 25 kids, and I stood up, and everybody else had mommies and daddies, great things, doctors, nurses, all sorts of things. But I got up with my picture, and I've had all these stick people, different colors, and I said, and I'm one of them, and we're all over the place. And in the picture, though, we had our hands on each other's hearts. And I said, and I'm one of them. And I remember the children laughing, and the teacher said, put away your crayons. And what struck me was, as a 5-year-old, you would think that you would be embarrassed, but all I remember was this sensation of it was just true. I wasn't embarrassed. I just loved that. And I didn't have the language for what that was, but very early on, I began getting that language in my teens, and then later. So I've been living that vision, that dream. It's taken on more parts to it, but at the core is connecting hearts all over the world.
I love that story, and I must say, obviously, I want to encourage people to read your book. The openness, the transparency, the vulnerability you share in your book as teaching stories to teach us about the four sacred gifts was amazing to me. So let me ask you, like, how was it to share such intimate parts of your life, including such parts that were, you know, like hard for me to read, and I can't imagine for you to experience.
Yes. Well, it was another level of healing process to even write that book. To write the level, I mean, I was very open about everything, not only all the great things, because in my life I've had, Indigenous wisdom keepers, and I've had
Yeah.
a mother with a 7th grade education, but I pit her against any PhD in terms of, you know, playing games and word games. She was an avid reader, all these, but at the same time, in my early years, I had this secret I kept of being sexually abused from age 4 to 13. And then, as if that weren't enough for an individual to deal with, then my father was murdered at age 13, mistaken for someone else in a race-related killing. And so he died. And that then, the power of that dream that we talked about before became really critical. So it wasn't an easy book at times to write. I felt like it was really critical in honoring this wisdom that was brought forth by 27 elders all over the world for all humanity. It wasn't for any one group of people. It was for all of us, that I needed to be able to be as fully authentic, transparent, and living those gifts. So I got those gifts in 1995 and immediately began incorporating them into my work. But that book did not come out to 2017. And it took
Can
me 6 years to write.
can you talk a little bit about the gathering of the indigenous
Yes.
peoples together?
So, yeah, so the vision for what happened was this Don Coyas, a Mohican elder, founder of White Bison, he had this vision. And in this vision, what some would call a dream time, he had spirit telling him to do a call to elders all over the world. And they were to come together and build this hoop and hang 100 eagle feathers from it. It was really explicit kind of vision. And that they would know then what gifts to put in it, because humanity needed it so badly, because human beings have forgotten how to be in right relationship with themselves, other people, nature, and spirit itself. And so he came out of that vision and immediately went and talked to the elders. And the elder says, you have to do this. You've had a vision. So of course, 27 elders responded to that. And who's going to get 100 eagle feathers? But he said the eagle feathers just started arriving. People would show up with eagle feathers. So for that weekend, in the different language, in the different indigenous traditions, chanting, singing, dancing, meditating, they put together this hoop. And then Spirit told them to put the 4 gifts in there so that all human beings use these gifts, and you will remember, because we have been in a great winter time, and it's time to prepare and use the gifts, and we'll be able to create harmony and balance again in the world.
So one of the gifts is the power of forgiveness. And let's circle back to your story.
Yes.
You know, how did you get to the point of forgiving what your father did to you, forgiving what the man who killed your father did to your family? I mean, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. Well, it was a process. It definitely took some time, but at the same time, what happened was I put up this wall. I call it my armor of my illusion of separateness. And I really good at it because I was like, no one's ever going to hurt me again. And, you know, just all that hurt and pain, I put up this wall. What the problem was, I learned even in my teens, very early began to sense is that this wall did keep out things from hurting, but it also kept out the good things.
Right.
And so as I started to bring down the wall, because it was really killing me, we think that hurt, pain, resentment, anger, you know, that didn't happen, and all the isms that exist. It's like it doesn't do much to anybody. It kills you, and I could feel it killing me. And so, with the help of elders, with the help of going to several therapists as a teen, I began to lower it. I didn't drop it all at once, but I began to lower it, and then I'd see other human beings seeing me in leadership roles, both in high school, and at 16, I started college, and I was student body president at CU Boulder. All these things, and so a part of my head, that negative self-talk is like, if they only knew, Michael, if they only knew who I really was. So that's the problem with hurts, mistreatments, small and big ones, that I came to understand very early, is that unless we do what we are meant to do, which is to release them, then we begin to identify. I began to identify with all the pains and mistreatment rather than who I really am. Those are circumstances, difficult ones, that I lived through, that I built some muscle, that I gained some compassion and understanding. But those problems were not me. Those experiences were not who ultimately I was or am today. So it was really important to let them go. And I will say, in addition to that, being able to forgive the unforgivable, you know, what my father did was wrong, and that will forever be wrong. However, I've even really, I was very sad from at age 41 to be murdered, to never have reconciled his life. And then a part of me realized, you know, this was his journey. And I did love him in spite of the pain he caused. I don't approve of what he did. And it's sad, but it's his journey. It was not my journey. This is my journey. And in my journey, I realized that forgiveness doesn't mean you're weak. Forgiveness doesn't mean that you approve of what happened. Forgiveness doesn't mean that you are betraying yourself or whole groups of people from some of the big atrocities that happen across whole groups of people. It doesn't mean you're not going to seek justice. But what it means is that I love myself enough that I could let go of that pain, really big time pain that was there, because I want to use my energy to create what it is I want now, what it is life-giving now, and to be able to go forward. So even in work with leaders in major companies and things, what I find is they're scared of this gift, this forgiving the unforgivable. Like, well, let's start with unity or hope. No, like we can start there. What we find, and I found in my own life, and I found working with them too, we can have great intention. I'm all for intention and living your purpose. But as great of intention and purpose you have and a vision, you will get in your way. It will limit it. I had big visions from my dream, big visions, but those visions became even bigger when I could let go of the barriers that I was causing because I wasn't able to trust. I was always suspect of things. I mean, I can't believe just so many things that I did. It was all out of self-protection. So I have compassion myself in that. But when I was able to let go of that, then the dreams and the ability to attract and to invite and collaborate with many different people across lots of similarities and lots of differences is all possible. But I don't think that I could have done that, because even though a lot of my work is diversity and inclusion, there was still a little piece of me until I could totally forgive that question. Is it really possible for us to care about each other, all our relations, regardless of our age or religion or lack thereof, or whatever it was, skin color, gender? I think that I was able to take back my humanity, my fullest vision, which is still unfolding, by letting go of that. So I say that with, allow me for rattling on a little bit longer talking, because I really want your listeners to know that this is for you. If you're being called to forgive, then answer that call, because it will affect everything. And that's a gift that, you keep using, and you start with little things at first and then work up to the big ones. But it's really so wonderful to be free. It's a path to freedom. It's a path to unconditional love of self and others. And just this summer, I had an elder say to me, I hear you're the forgiveness lady. And I said, yeah, I'm called that. And he said, well, I want you to add, I heard about your book and stuff, but I want to add something for you to think about, that forgiveness is also the passcode to your divinity. And I just, when you feel, that's the thing with the gifts, they go to the truth. And that elder saying that, I was like, yes, thank you.
That's actually interesting, because I was about to ask you, because listening to you talk about it and listening to you, the words you use and your movement of your body, my takeaway from hearing your talk about forgiveness is not just a mental thing. There's a somatic aspect to it, and I was going to ask about the spiritual aspect to it too. Can you talk about how what happened inside your body, and then at the spiritual level, how this all worked together through the process of the forgiveness?
Yes.
Not just mentally.
You're describing, because what I was always taught since little about our role as human beings is to always be in alignment. And the alignment, so we can be good medicine or bad medicine. Good medicine is anything that puts into alignment the spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical. And so you're right that using the gifts work at all those levels. At the spiritual level, I was really angry at one point, and I remember, it's kind of hard to remember, but I do remember like screaming at God at one point, and like, why are you, and I didn't even scream about the abuse and the other. That I began working through, because I did try to actually end my life when I was 13. Because although my father was gone and this horrible, the images kept coming. And so I thought there was no way out. So fortunately, it didn't work. And then with that, I made the promise at that point that I would never forget of who I really am and what I am, which is, science will call it energy. I call it a spiritual being in this physical form. And all of it matters. All of it matters. And I want to live my life and contribute what I'm supposed to be doing. So I talk about a life-giving force. So I had a lot of conversations with spirit, with the great mystery that some will call God or Jesus, others will call it Allah, universe energy. I think I've spoken to a lot of those different entities. I grew up and am still Christian, but I'm also earth-based, indigenous, and I see no conflict in that. So I think every day, I start every day and ending it every day with a practice. And one of the practices that I started doing as a teenager was giving gratitude and singing a chant to the great mystery. And so I do know, even with a PhD and all the science and stuff I've had, is that there is something more. It doesn't take away from what the knowledge of science, but it lets you go further to understand there's more than just our senses. And we know that. We know that those, what we some will call magic and others will say intuition, but there's this other greater thing at work. And I trust that. You know, I truly trust that. And I've seen it work its magic through people in all different kinds of difficult situations. So it may not happen as quickly as we want, but I know, I trust, like even what we're dealing with now, I trust we will move through this. We will create positive changes out of this. We will come more together. And I'm not naive that it won't take some work and not everyone will hear the invitation, but that doesn't mean I close my heart to the invitation.
Were there somatic or body-oriented practices that helped you both get through the trauma that was locked in the body, mind, spirit system, as well as lead you to towards forgiveness?
Yes. Even during the depths of being a young girl and the abuse, the thing that I love was sports. I was a big time baseball player, softball player, and volleyball player. And I remember, not at the time when I was doing it, but later when I thought about it, I was like, wow, that was the time I trusted my body, that I felt like I had control of my body. I was releasing things during that. As a teenager, when people heard my story, I had to counsel a few of the therapists because they would say things like, oh, you should be dead. I'm like, don't tell anybody that, please. Tell them, wow, you are special. You have a real reason to be here, you know? But I know that was it. And then I knew that when I didn't use physical to help release, to even experience joy, not just releasing pain, people showed up. So there was a period of time that I worked with retired, frontline, special ops men. And we do these exercises. I've always done Qigong, but I also learned how to release from our psoas muscle, the largest muscle down the lower back, how to breathe and to lay down and to actually move that energy out of your body. And so I incorporate that. Some people are frightened by that kind of thing, but actually there's some, even in some corporate places where they very quietly, like, okay, we move away, we close things, we turn towards the wall, and we begin doing the releasing, because it's powerful and it doesn't take much time. I think I know a little of your background, you're probably familiar with all different kinds of somatic kinds of things. They're very critical. So fortunately, with even indigenous teachings very early on as a child, I was taught how to breathe so that I could hear nature. So if I needed to go hunt for food, I wouldn't scare off. I was taught how to do these things. And we need to be taught these things, you know, not just the primo athletes who do learn how to do these things, but we all need these to be, it's part of us being thriving, is to be able to do that. So the somatic, thanks, you're the only person who's ever asked me that question. And I love it because it's an important part. And so even when in my work, periodically I'll stand up and let's do some Qigong kind of moves and stuff. And sometimes I even teach the somatic, the deep releasing trauma,
Awesome.
releasing stress.
Good. What I like to do is actually go back before your drawing in kindergarten. And I'm curious, do you see some of the work that you've done around forgiveness is not necessarily just about you and the issues that you have to deal with, but is there a intergenerational or transgenerational and like ancestral component to it that you've been made aware of,
Yes.
that you're kind of healing your lines in any way?
Yes, I think with all of this that we do that, and it's clear to me. But one of the things that happened very early for me, that I think where the forgiveness was, because I already had an understanding, because this is going to sound funny, but at age 15 months, I I had a near-death experience. And I didn't know about it. My family never told me about it. But at age 19, I began having these dreams, and I kept seeing this doll falling out of the sky. And I loved sleeping because I love my dreams. They really helped me. But for a few months, I did not like going to sleep because I'd wake up. And then over time, over those months, I started seeing more and more. I could see the space and stuff, but I still thought it was some doll falling. And I would wake up always catching my chest. And then one of the times, I'm all of a sudden, I'm in the dream. There's me looking, and this is not an accurate description. All I can say is light.
Mm-hmm.
There was this incredible light energy that was infinite. And like all my dreams, then I loved going to bed at night because it just kept coming and coming. And I knew this was important. And I remember calling my mother, she wasn't there. My younger sister, I told her, and she wasn't there. And a sister, my older sister, I called and began sharing this dream because I wanted to tell her about the light. But she started sobbing. And so I had to quiet her down. And it turned out that she's 5 years older than me. And so when I was 15 months old, that would make her, about 6 years old, she was supposed to be watching me. So here's a little girl watching a little person. And I fell off the second floor balcony thing and landed on broken rock, which most people would say more likely than not you would have died. And they did thought I was dead, but they never told me about it. And so it came back. And that whole, I believe that unbeknownst to me, even then, and I'm grateful for it, that I understand what we're part of something bigger. And there is a reason for me to be here. There's a reason for every sacred being to be here. Everyone's sacred. We don't always operate in sacred ways, nor do I. We have to forgive ourselves and pull ourselves back up and then go again. And I know that knowing, that worldview, that many in science would say, well, now that doesn't fit in here. That's okay with me too. Because I understand they stay with the physical, but to me, this was as physical, as understandable in the mystery space, as well as in the understanding of how I am here on the earth. So thank you for asking that too. That is a very important thing for me to understand, and allows me to be in spaces that there's heavy conflict, and people often wonder, like, how can you be there? Well, I've been in places where, someone's child has broken curfew, and no matter what we agree on in terms of they come from warring countries at war with each other, that child will still be executed. However, we still have now in the future children. And so I think, people have different levels of understanding, and that was a deep one for me. So the understanding this spiritual, both from my elders, but from also this very early near-death experience, plays a role in understanding there's something much bigger than just me and my own experiences, or you and your experiences. There is this much greater. And when we can come together collectively and open to that, then that's when I see, the miracles that happen every day. It's great to be conscious of those so we can continue to create them.
Do you know much about your birth?
Yes, I do. It was an easy birth, actually. And I do remember getting born. My mom told me those stories, but I also remember being born and understanding when I was born, I remember choosing to come in. And I do remember even choosing that family. But I remember a lot of sense of beings, light beings, a sense of energy, I guess is probably about the easier, of coming through. And my part of my hope for today is the children being born today are coming in with more of that sense. But also I don't give up on those of us who are older, that we also are becoming more aware. Even in this time, I love how much I'm kind of the connection lady and the forgiveness, lending, unity, all these different things. But some of my friends that I've talked to for some time are saying to me, and I just stay in silence and smiling and so grateful. They're like, I'm bumping up against parts of myself, but now I'm remembering this, and I'm feeling this, and I'm feeling my heart opening, and I'm just like, and I'm doing these kindnesses to the neighbor. I don't like this neighbor. I never liked this neighbor. And now I'm doing this for this neighbor. Like, what's happening to me? And I'm just like, oh, this is so wonderful, right, Michael? It's just great. We're remembering that we're part of a whole hoop of life, you know, not this illusion of being only alone. I'm never alone. I get lonely. That's a human kid, but I'm never alone. I'm so clear. I have this reverse conspiracy going about how everything is working in favor of me being a life-giving force, just as it's in favor of everyone being a life-giving force.
I love that. That is awesome. And that's actually a good segue to the second of the sacred gifts, which is unity. Can you speak a little bit about unity
Yes, the
as one of
gift
the
of,
as a medicine?
oh, well, yes, the gift of unity. We do nothing alone. So I'll just continue from that. So I'm sitting here, you know, in the foothills of the Rockies, and I can look out the window and I see the tree. And part of what my elders taught me growing up, but I just do it more and more and more, is just every breath. It's not just this body. I have to take care of this vessel because this body is working. But it's those trees, it's those plants. They're taking the carbon that it needs and then giving me the oxygen. So thank you. I'm not even breathing alone. So when I stop with the, oh, this is all hard and this is me. Yes, it's not easy coming from where I came from. It's not easy the person to go through a PhD program and do it so young and have all these things. It's not, and people have far more. However, when we realize there's all these other forces that can come together and help support it, then it's great. So in this unity, a lot of my work has to do with really helping people love each other, really come to care each other at minimum, across all the different differences. And in order to do that, then it's this gift of unity. So I have so many stories, I won't go into them all, but there's so many stories where that unity, understanding and using that gift is what allows us to do some of the big things. And even the big things I think about in my life, I'm sure you do in your life, when you really look and like, yeah, that was like, and who was there? Oh my gosh, there was that professor, there was that teacher. Oh, there was that pet of mine who would come every time when they knew I was just like, or procrastinating, and just give me that nudge. There's just, so unity, we can do things in unity that individually we might be able to do, but it's like it's like you're going to have to push, like pushing the boulder uphill, as they say, rather than the pull that can happen when there's all of us in our shared vision and dreams, and we can move it. We can move such things in that. And I've seen that unity most recently with even the Amazon burning. And I'm just so excited tonight. There's a big a show on television with great, all these famous people coming together. But what I also know is like the individuals that aren't famous, aren't known, you know, who are asking, where do I go to contribute money? That's the lungs of my earth. That's 20% of our oxygen. So, and now with this virus, that's halfway around the world. But guess what? It's impacting us. It's impacting all of us. Some of us even more than others just because of all the inequities. But nonetheless, it's not discriminating. It's coming for everyone. So it's about care and love. So we're seeing it right now, the unity that can come with the kindnesses, the care, the not going into this divisive separation, which if I can, I want to say that one really terrible one that I'm seeing right now that I'm just bringing in everywhere I can, unity, which is it's making good and bad. So the good person is the good person who's staying sheltered in solidarity for their life and the lives of others, and they're staying in. And they may not have money, they may not, but they're staying. Oh, and the bad people are the people who are arguing and saying, I've got to go to work. You know, I need the money. I have to support my family. And we're acting as if one is good and one is bad. Either way you go. And I'm like, what in the world? We're talking about a dilemma that both groups care about their families. And we're falling into this pattern that has been of separating and divide. So this gift of unity at this time to understand from everything from from the breath we take to the things that we share, the oxygen, the earth, everything that impacts us all over the world because winds blow things and all of that, that how can we come together to at least listen to listen to each other, to at
And,
least expect to be treated with dignity,
and,
even
and,
if I don't agree.
and listen is one of the key aspects I know of healing. But before we get to the healing, let me ask you about the unity piece. You talk about Standing Rock, as
Mhm.
an example of unity, where tribes, indigenous folks from all over the globe, and others, not just indigenous folks, a
Yes.
lot of military vets came to support. But one of the things that stood out for me, because you were just talking about the Amazon as the lungs of the earth, you just talked about the trees processing your carbons, providing you oxygen, is the water protectors.
Yes.
And like, the unity was around protecting the sacred water.
Yes. Well, depending on your size and age, anywhere from 55% to 80% of your body, each of our bodies is
Mm.
water.
Yeah,
So water is sacred. We need water.
yeah.
If we don't have oxygen, we don't have rest, the next thing is water, we will cease to exist in this form. So water becomes really critical. And what was really beautiful about that whole thing is it was young people began running to bring the awareness of the poisoning of water, not only on indigenous land, but as this river goes down through major cities through the
Mm.
Midwest. And so the coming together not only of indigenous people, and understand most indigenous people hold this belief that we're all connected, we're all relatives. That doesn't mean we don't have problems with each other. So
Mm.
some of the tribes who actually hadn't spoken to each other, they let that drop. And they came together because the unity around the sacredness of water was more important. And that could be heard because when something's really true, it gets heard across different languages and things. I just know that. I've experienced it too many times. And so we have people coming from all over the world who would not say they're part of a tribe. They're not indigenous, although all of us are from the earth, nonetheless. And they've come and they've continued. And that kind of growth has happened all over with various events that are happening where indigenous, non-indigenous have come together, not necessarily agreeing on everything, but on some of the essential things to life, like water being sacred, has been a really powerful thing. And I think in a couple of weeks is World Water Day. And I know that there are a lot of events that are going to be happening, and wherever you are, you will see indigenous events happening, but also combine in collaboration with other people who are not of the tribes, because we realize this is about all of us. This is about the unity, the oneness of life.
Nice. I love that. So the first gift is forgiveness. The second gift is unity. You started touching on the third gift, which is healing. Part of healing, as you've already acknowledged, is like deep listening. You tell a story about your son in your
Oh,
book.
my eldest, my Alejandro, Alex, yes, and he's bless him that really early, because this book came out 3 or 4 years ago. um, and when I was writing it, he said, "Mom," I asked him, "Can I tell this story?
Mm.
Because it's pretty personal." And here he was as a teenager, and he said, "Mom, is it going to help people?" And I said, "Yes." And he says, "Then write it. But the only
Wow.
thing I ask you is you not share the name of my girlfriend at
The
that time."
girlfriend. Okay.
And I said, "I will never do that." And I love him for that. So the what happened is a good example of this healing and listening playing a role is that my son was very happy, and he was about to go into the senior year of college, and he saved up his money, and he has this girlfriend for a couple of years at that point, and he moved in his place. We were all very excited for him and her, and they were just having a great old time. She was living on campus. He had his own place. And then there was this sobbing that happened on a Labor Day weekend coming in the door, and I just ran down, and a mother, any father will know. You hear that kind of, I immediately looked at him to see if there was blood. There wasn't. And he just cried. But all of a sudden, as he was doing that, as a mama bear, I wanted to start drilling him with the questions. What's going on? What's happening? And a part of me just came so full alive that, wait a minute, after I looked and saw there was no blood, was like, be here for him. Trust him. Trust his wisdom. And the only way to do that was to give the gift of listening. And so this lasted for some time. He ended up explaining that this woman that he was so in love with told him she didn't love him, and that they broke up. And he couldn't understand it. And he just kept saying, "My heart hurts so bad. My heart hurts." And so this went on for months. And when our children were little, we never let them sleep in bed with us. But we always told them, if you need us, you come up and bring pillow and blankets are here, and you can sleep there. Well, my son had just at that point turned 21. And he slept for a couple months outside my bedroom door on the floor, all 6 foot, one of them at the time. He ends up being 6'3". And what happened then over time, Thanksgiving, is when he finally told us more of the details. Up to then, my husband and I, we just listened and trusted. And what he told us is that he was at a party, saw his ex-girlfriend there. She had been drinking. He went up to her and he said to her, I'm not trying to get back together, but I just want to understand. I was totally thrown by this. And she looked at him and he said, if it's because of the money, I'm only 21, but I've helped friends already I'll make money and blah, blah, blah. And then he said, Mom, I don't know where it came from. I think it came out of my guts. From her face, I could tell that wasn't it. And I just said, it's because I'm Mexican and a Native American, isn't it? And she nodded her head yes and walked away. And when he explained that, it was really hard. He told me that I was in a car and I remember gripping the steering wheel really tightly. And what came out though is, I'm here, I'm listening. And he was sobbing and I just said, I'm here, I'm listening. And it went the fullest route. At Christmas time, he then told us afterwards that it was a hard fall. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, hard fall, hard season. He just said, I so love you and Dad. Neither one of you told me what to do or ever said anything bad about her. I learned so much. I learned that I have a big heart, but it can heal. I learned who were really my friends, the ones I could call at 2 a.m. and they just listened to me. And then the ones who weren't, who would say horrible things about her. And I just really appreciate you letting me do this. It was really hard to just listen, but that was the important gift. So what I ended up understanding later was that, as I write that story, and there's more to it, but I'll just close with, is that listening is fundamental to healing. And as I've studied healing all over the world with Indigenous traditions, listening is really key. But healing, I know that listening can help heal a broken heart. What I didn't realize, it didn't just heal my son's heart. It healed this mama's heart. Mm-hmm. And now I kind of get at another level that ever since I was little, my grandmother and my mom and my elders teaching me about listening with the softest part of your ear and the expanding part of your heart. And so listening is one of the fundamental things to healing. Because if we don't listen, we won't know what's broken inside ourselves, let alone giving the space and grace to someone else to be about their healing. So it's really powerful practices, listening.
Well, yeah, one of my takeaways from that section of your book is listening is not just like hearing. No. There's a deep presence, a fully embodied, heartfelt, creating the space, deep presence. And I loved when you talked about it wasn't about you. Like your first inclination as a mother bear, I think you said, is like, I want to know the story. So, but like, and then you had this realization, like going down that path was about you as opposed to what he might need. And that you're able to quickly switch to the deep listening, which I thought was like a great part of that story.
Yes. Well, the needs of others, I think it continue because we all have needs. Every behavior is a need being expressed. However, at times when you realize, wait, my needs are important, so I'm not diminishing me, but this is what's important now. And so when people are truly listened to, not just heard, really listened to, even if you don't agree with them, they feel that, they sense that. And that's the gifts that I'm hoping in this time too of sheltering in, that we're doing more of that we're seeking that out for ourselves. First of all, just listening to ourselves and others. So yeah, so thank you. And thank my Alex for allowing me to share that story. He's 29 now. He's engaged. He had to move his wedding to next February. And he's in advertising business, PR in Southern California. And it's just thriving. He's doing really great.
That's great to hear. And speaking of listening, one of the other takeaways was his ability to listen to himself at a body level and just be with what arose inside of himself, which is amazing for a young person. let alone any person.
For any person, any human.
Yeah.
That's just it. We have to give ourselves credit, whether we're
Yeah.
that's why I'm seeing some of this in small children, even like, whoa,
Mm.
they're coming from another choosing to come here, and but at whatever age, it's never too late. And even when we fall short of that, it's never like, oh, okay. So when I fall short, I like, okay, I forgive you. Now be present again. Listen.
So that's the third one of the gifts is healing. And the fourth one is hope.
Yeah, I love hope. Hope in action. And hope is an energy source. So hope is something, and you could read up on hope now, lots of different authors, and they're pretty split. Some will say, let's stop this hope stuff. That's just, makes people settle back and not do anything. Well, but that's not the kind of hope I'm talking about.
Mhm.
The hope that I was taught from elders and have lived in my life is the one that requires action, because hope is an energy source. It's a sense of believing the possibility of something happening that could be totally contrary to the facts. So we've had in our lives, many of our lives, we've experienced like going to the moon. A lot of people are, that's hogwash, no way. Well, that was a vision, and that's the possibility of that. And to stay hopeful and in action, putting the resources together to make that happen. That's a big one. But we all have those in our lives. And so one of the things that saddened me, and I don't stay in the sadness, instead I just ask if you want some support, I'll help you with that, is all the hopelessness that people are expressing. Like, no, it's just, this is just the way it is. I always get quiet on that because it's like, what is just the way it is?
Right, right.
That's not true in my life. That's exactly the opposite. What is like everything, it's possible to shift and change, just like the seasons. Everything can change, and we can be part of that. So I advise people, I invite people to please, even if they want to be hopeless all day long, before they go to bed, at least in that moment, ask for your ancestors, ask for the
Mhm.
angels, whatever brings you safety and wisdom, your pets, the sun, whatever it is, to be there, to bring in dream time, all the possibilities and the hopes. And even if you don't remember, just do that practice, because when we can dream, when we can vision, when we can hope for something beyond something that's causing pain and suffering, then what happens, we have this pull, and we know with our brain that we're all into just surviving. So the amygdala, the primitive part of our brain, will take on and make everything as a threat. And that's how sometimes it feels like something like everything's a threat. It looks like, what if the possibility this is happening for us instead of to us?
Mhm.
And I've asked myself, what if this even little virus, as horrible as it is for all the deaths, is happening for us instead of to us? And if I just allow myself that possibility, then I began to see more and name all the gratitude for the things that are unfolding, that is bringing to our awareness, and helping each other and caring about each other and seeing the environment cleaning up. No way could scientists have ever thought they'd have a 2 or 3 month window to see really what is our impact, and to see, well, it doesn't mean we just go back totally to the way we were. Like, let's be discerning, and let's be in disagreement and agreement about what that might look like. But to have the vision, the possibility, the hope that there is something else. So with that, I wanted to say, one of the things I read recently, a person sent me the article from the UK, and they did a recent poll, a very large one, of how many, asking people, do they want to go back? So it's like, go back to what is normal, and how many don't. So I was ready. I took my deep cleansing breath, because I thought, as I was reading this article, I'm gonna get a little bummed out. So just take a breath. And I was totally surprised. 97% of the people polled said, no, they don't want to go back to the way it was.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean they don't want to go back to some of it, but a lot of it they realized was not very healthy, and they would like to change. Only 3% of that poll in the UK said they wanted to go back.
So 3% want to sit in traffic for an hour and a half each way on the way to work and sit in a
Yes,
cubicle, not
is that
engage with their
unbelievable?
family and friends and
Yes, well,
community.
so kindness to them. And I just love that. So then I went, okay, what's happening in the US? And we're just starting to see polls happening in the US.
Mhm.
So I don't know that it will look the same as the UK, but that fear that in myself, that unless I took that breath so I could stay present to read the article, I would never have known. Anita, your assumptions, your fears are exactly that. And you have to have clear vision. You need to look to see that there was actually something different. I'm glad I finished that article.
That's awesome. So those are the four gifts, and the name of your book is The Four Sacred Gifts: Indigenous Wisdom from Modern Times. You mentioned earlier on you had a practice, your AM ritual, your PM ritual. Besides, obviously, people should read your book. What might you leave people with in terms of this conversation of things they should think about, how they might want to start their day? How might they want to finish their day? And I did hear it just a few seconds ago, like dreaming is really important to you. So maybe you plug in how we might set ourselves up to use dream time to make changes in our lives or increase our awareness. But talk about, how you might suggest people start their day and end their day.
Yes. Well, I start my day pretty much the same way. Sometimes I condense it to 15 minutes. Other times it's a plentiful 45 minutes. But I always start with first just the first breath that I open my eyes. I'm conscious of that breath and have it just fill my whole body. And then I go from my toes right up. It can be very quickly when I don't have a lot of time. Just awakening all of it and being in gratitude. I'm here. I'm alive. This works. That works. Sending love and light to a place that might be a little sore or whatever else, but just grateful for that. And then I either read something. I always have something beside my bed. I read something inspirational. Oh, I just remember a quote from the day before, or a quote that I love, like just the quote from my grandmother's been coming up with, every day is a new day. Thank you, new day. It's a new day. And then I get up and I get out and I take that first glass of water and I give gratitude for the water. Gratitude. And then I go for a short walk to get the paper with my dog. And on that walk, I chant. And my chant is a very simple one. It comes from the wind, and a few words are from Seneca, my Seneca relatives who allow me to use those words. And it basically says, thank you, great mystery. And I sing it, and I move to the four directions, the four different parts of the world, the four elements, and I'm giving gratitude and know that there's something more than just what I'm seeing, and inviting all the positive possibilities and to be a life force. So that sounds like a lot of things. You can pick any one of those, but I find I can do all of that in 15 minutes, and that's all I have. And other times I can be more spacious of 45 minutes to do that. But the key for me is like gratitude. Gratitude is a big one. And the more specific and intentional I can be about it, the more I'm able to connect up to the Hoopa life of all my relatives, both the human beings, two-leggeds, as well as the other beings. So I try to name, I do name as many as possible. That's some of the elder wisdom that I got since I was a little girl.
Nice.
It helps. All I'll say is that it works for me.
That's awesome. And how about the end of your day?
At the end of the day, I go through the process of just gratitude as I get into bed, just everything working, and I have to remind myself the things I got done, because I have this little voice sometimes, but you didn't do that article and this article is due. It's like, okay, that's true. Tomorrow will come. But go through that. And then again, I do my chant, and I think of something inspirational, or I read something inspirational. And that ends my day. In the middle of the day, though, I've added other practices. I make sure to do the somatic stuff. So that little walk in the morning is not enough. So the shaking or qigong, some deep breathing. But that morning and night, I just find it's so important, because it's also an honoring of me at every level, at the spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical level. And in honoring me, then I have more of the capacity to give that to others as I encounter them.
That's awesome. So you talk about gratitude. Well, let me say I'm grateful for you coming on my show today. I've enjoyed this conversation. I loved your book. Where can people learn more about your work in general, and specifically find your book?
Yes. Well, you can go to foursacredgifts.com. That's FOUR, sacredgifts.com. And there you can find a lot more about the gifts, and you can actually download for free a song that was made from the messages in the book for the book. And there you can, it's too hard to give you all the different websites, but on there you can also find my work, where the consulting and training and other things I do. You can find that link at sancheztennis.com. But go to forsacredgifts.com, because I just know these gifts already belong to you. So use them, and all the other gifts that are there. But I know now, from some 20 some years of using these gifts and sharing them with others in all different sorts of environments, that they work. And we each one of us are needed at this time. So forsacredgifts.com.
Awesome. Well, very important medicine. Anita, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you, Michael.